Oh, snappins. And we are live. Oh, crap. I have not been live in a very, very, very long time. And I'm like, I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. And I'm sure the heck hoping so. Everything looks to be working on my end at this moment. Oh, if you are live with me, please say hi. I am going to be available to answer any questions in the chat. If you are just coming for the replay, the comments should also be playing for you, which will be nice. And I really just wanted to have this talk. So, first, thank you so much for joining me. This is the first live talk I've done on YouTube besides my meditation. So I'm super excited. And I also have my podcast going as well, if you guys can see my little microphone. And that's because I am also going to use this for a future podcast episode because I think that it's so important. So today we are talking about learning how to love yourself. And it's going to be an interesting topic. And I really say that because the way that this topic even came up and the reason why I even wanted to talk about it was because of a TikTok that I actually did. And it actually kind of like came into my brain as I was shooting the TikTok. And I was like, oh crap. Like that brings up so many questions and I feel like it should be talked about. Does that mean I'm going to answer everything? No, because I don't know everything I need to talk about, but what I believe in, especially when I do these lives, when I do my podcast, I believe that having an outline is good, but really just flowing off of that information and seeing where that conversation leads. So, um, as we continue on this wonderful journey of loving yourself, who knows how long this talk is going to be, but I'm super duper excited just about being live and just being present and being here. Like, just completely love it. So, thank you all for joining me. Thank you if you're on the replay for watching. I really do appreciate it. All right. So, first things first, who the heck am I, right? Should probably be answering this question first. So, my name is Tay Youngblood. I am the Unapologetic Trauma Release Guide. I help women who've been through sexual trauma um, reconnect and love themselves more so that they can create healthy boundaries, feel safe in their bodies, and really build healthy relationships. I enjoy the work that I do. I've been a trauma release guide for the last 5 years, and it has brought so much joy and so many interesting people into my life. And I'm just super excited about the work that I do. When I was a kid, I was sexually abused. And it took me on a whirlwind of avenues that I didn't even know existed. And when we did finally, I should say, when I finally did come clean about the abuse, there was a lot of, this didn't happen and things of that nature. And it really brought me to a point of not being able to trust myself or trust me telling the truth about things. Now, that is not to say that once I brought this up, that nothing was done. There were things done. I did end up going to counseling. There was a police report made. But in the long run, the counseling that I went to really didn't help me to really heal from what had happened. And going into school and going into high school and college, this really affected me in ways that I didn't even realize. It affected my relationships, it affected my friendships, and I didn't even realize that it was doing that on so many levels. And when I got into high school, I had a situation where I couldn't even be in a room full of teenage boys because it caused me anxiety. And I actually flipped out on a teacher who would not open the door for me, because I was actually closed in this room. It was just me, and all of my male classmates and my male teacher. And I had a panic attack and was just like, I need to get out of here, and ended up leaving the classroom. And from that point on, I realized that teachers weren't really well informed of like things like to look for things like this that could possibly be triggers for people like me who have been through this type of abuse. And it was hard. It was so, so hard. And from high school on, I realized like I really wanted to help people who were in my situation, who had been through this thing, but were still struggling, were still dealing with that anxiety, that trying to get over this trauma and not being able to have the right coping mechanisms to do so. Right. So we fast forward into college, and because of not being able to find these coping mechanisms, I started to use love and sex interchangeably as a way to cope with what happened to me. And that, of course, didn't start until after I had sex. And going forward, it was almost like in order for me to be with the person that I was with, I had to give them sex in order for them to love me. And this was almost like kind of apparent in my very first relationship, where my ex boyfriend basically told me that if we didn't have, like, after so long, if we hadn't had sex, like, it wasn't, we weren't going to do anything, or we weren't going to be more, which was really weird to me. And he basically told me at one point that me being molested was an obstacle. It was a challenge for him. And that was literally after he kissed me and touched my boob without my permission. Like, this was before, consent culture and things of that nature. I flipped out, and he basically was like, that's an obstacle. Like, I don't understand why you're not over it, basically. It was just a weird, weird conversation. Um, and then going forward, going into all of the things that I decided that I was going to do, go into relationships and things of that nature, there was a point where I realized that I no longer wanted to use sex and love interchangeably, because what it wasn't doing was it wasn't making me happy. It was not making me happy. I wanted to be in a relationship. I wanted to be having sex. I wanted to feel loved. But that was, for me in that moment, what I was thinking about, it was not the way to do it. So I really just decided, let me go ahead and try to fix this in my brain. I needed a rewiring, if you will, of what that actually meant to me, about what love really meant to me. So fast forward, I ended up getting married. I decided that I wanted to be married. I didn't want kids, though. And that was just always my thing. I wanted to be married, but I didn't want to have kids. And I found a man who wanted to get married, and he knew that I didn't want to have kids, and he was okay with that. And we did. We ended up getting married, and things were great for a while. And what ended up happening was, as we moved through our relationship, each of us started to grow in different ways. And we eventually did grow apart in a lot of those ways. But one of the things that ended up happening was I really began to see that a lot of his insecurities were coming out. So it was keeping me from wanting to be present. But also, I found that our growth paths were so different that I was no longer attracted to the things that he was saying to me anymore. And it really sucked in those moments, because now that I think about it, I'm like, these are the reasons why, um, you know, people say, like, when it comes to marriage, love isn't enough. And it's really true. It really was. We had a difference of opinions, but we didn't know how to communicate those differences and how we could meld those things together. And in reality, it was super hard. So I remember really feeling lost within our relationship and really feeling like I didn't know what to do. And no matter how much I went to him and asked him, like, what can I do? He didn't have an answer. And I realized now it wasn't because he was trying to be a butthole or anything. It really was probably that he just didn't know at that time what he wanted and what he was looking to do within his life, like his path, where he wanted to go. And then you have to think about whether or not that path included me. And I had to think about whether that path included him. And that information just was not present for us to know that. And nor were we really thinking about it. We were kind of just moving along and trying to let things, get back together without doing the work, basically. So there was a time where I just eventually got fed up. I was just like, you know what, I'm over it. Like I'm so over it. And this was in 2018. I was just like, I'm done. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. I don't know anything. Like, there had been so much going on and building up that I really had no idea like what was happening. Like, I was losing trust and faith and love in my husband. And it's possible he was doing the same thing with me, but we weren't talking about it and communicating about it. Yes, we were going to therapy, but we hadn't really like got to the crux of what was going on. So one day I was just like, I want to go to the bookstore because I want to look for a book. I need some help. And I'm still am really big into self-help books because I think that they're great. They give you so many wonderful tidbits about life, about love, about jobs, about everything. Like, they're just like, here's, life hacks for cooking, like, meal planning and things of that nature, like these little things. So I was like, there has to be a book that was written by somebody who is going through the exact same thing I was going through. Like, somebody please tell me how I can fix my husband, how I can fix his insecurities and his depression and all of the things that he was going through, because I was like, I was in a good place. I was up and he was not. And I was like, how the heck do I fix this? So what I ended up doing was we went to the bookstore, we went to Half Price Books, and I'm just walking around and like doing little things. And I go to the self-help book place. I go to like the marriage section. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna find a book. And truth be told, there's no book that tells you how to fix your husband or your wife, how to fix their insecurities, how to fix their problems. Like, it doesn't, there's not a book like written like that. Like, that's not a thing. And I didn't know that at the time. And I laugh now because it's funny. Like, I really thought I was going to go in there and I was going to find this perfect book. Like, how do I fix this person that I am in this relationship with, right? But that didn't happen, obviously. So I'm like looking around and I'm like, crap, like I can't find this book. And I'm like picking up books and I'm reading the inside flap and I'm like, nope, this isn't it. I'm looking at the titles. I'm like, that definitely isn't it. Like, it was quite ridiculous. Like, I was seriously looking for this book. And after a little while, I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. So I kind of just like sat in the aisle for a second. I was kind of just like thinking, like, where else can I look? And a little voice in my head said, the spirituality section. And I thought that was strange. And I was like, okay, sure. Like, just follow that intuition, right? So I turn around and there's a guy in the book section who works there. And I say, hey, do you guys have a spirituality section? And he goes, yeah, it's right there. And literally he points to the sign above my head. Literally, I was standing underneath the sign, right? And I'm like, oh, thanks. So I go and I'm like looking at like all the books in the section. I'm like, I have no idea what I am looking for. And I peruse the shelves and there's everything from like rooms to meditation to all kinds of stuff. Like, literally, when I tell you this section was plethorous with like information of what you could possibly be doing, what you could be thinking, tarot, just all the things, right? And just as I was getting ready to give up, I was just about to give up because I was like, okay, I've literally like, I scanned all the shelves looking for, I didn't know what the fuck I was looking for. I didn't know what I was looking for. I'm scanning the shelves and I'm like, okay, all right. where is this book? And I'm like looking, and I scan these shelves maybe like 3, 4 times. And right as I was getting ready to leave, I look up and I see this rainbow book that's like niched in between these other books. And I'm like, what's that? And I look, and the book is called Journaling the Chakras. And I'm like, what is that? So I pull down the book and I look at it. And on the front, there's this woman, and she's like sitting Indian style, and she has like her chakras all lit up. And um, I'm like, this looks interesting. And I read the back of it, and I'm like, I think this book is for me. So I'm like, all right, this is the book. So I buy the book. Me and my ex-husband, my now ex-husband, leave the store, and we're driving. And as we're driving, I get stopped at a stoplight, and I go ahead and I open the first page of the book. And the first page, I read the first 2 pages of this book, and it's basically just scanning. And right then and there, I knew that I had found the book that I was looking for. And the funny thing was, this book was not about fixing my marriage. It wasn't about fixing his insecurities or fixing his depression or trying to figure out how we can reconnect. Like, it was not about that at all. The book was about how to realign myself and my chakras so that I can be a more whole person. And I was like, all right, well, let's do it. So the book is like an 8-week course. And you basically each week meditate on the chakras and journal about what you experience and things of that nature, blah, blah, blah. I took 10 weeks because my sacral chakra and my third eye, I worked on for an extra week. And as I was working through these chakras and I got to the solar plexus, not the solar plexus, the sacral chakra, um, I got really stuck. It was the week before my birthday, and I didn't know like what to do in regards to like anything. We were having a birthday party for me, and it was a really big thing. And I remember starting out doing these meditations, and within like 2 or 3 days, my libido slowed down to nearly nothing. Um, Thinking about sex just wasn't a topic. Um, like doing anything sexual didn't appeal to me at all. Like, I had no desire whatsoever. Um, And it was so crazy because there was so much going on at that time. And I remember talking to my ex-husband and telling him, like, I just really need you to understand, like, this has nothing to do with you. I said, I don't know what's going on. I said, but like literally, like my sexual drive it's gone. I don't know where it went. I was kind of scared because I was like, oh shoot, like this is about to be some stuff. So I remember talking to a friend of mine, and I was talking to her because she's very spiritual and has worked with chakras before. And I was just like, I've never worked with chakras before. Can you tell me, like, is this a normal occurrence? Like, does something like this happen? And she was like, sometimes, yes. Like she said, yes, sometimes that does happen where if a chakra needs more healing or something like that, it will shut down. It will shut down all the functions of what it was supposed to be doing in that moment. Any desires, any creativity, anything that chakra is responsible for, it will shut it down, and basically kind of do a reset. So I was like, well, I kind of feel like I should probably do like another week on my sacral chakra. And she was like, absolutely. She said, I feel like that would definitely work for you. I was like, cool, thanks, awesome, wonderful. So I'm going through, and on one of the days, a friend of mine had actually invited me out to go see Les Miserables at the theater. And I was like, absolutely, let's do it. And that day I hadn't meditated yet. And I was like, all right, let me go ahead and meditate before I even leave the house. So I sat at my table. I went ahead and I closed my eyes and I meditated. And within 3 minutes of meditating, I started to cry. And I could not understand why I was crying, but I felt like I was grieving. for the loss of something. And I didn't understand like what was happening. And I was just like, okay. So I kind of just like let the feelings flow in and like do the things. And I kind of just like, eventually like it cleared out. And I was like, okay, like I feel better. Like I physically, emotionally, spiritually felt better. And within a couple of days after that, my desire for sex came back and my libido ramped back up and things kind of were like normal again. I was like, oh crap, like, wow, that was kind of crazy. Um, and then that's when I did go ahead and finish all the rest of the chakras. And as I was doing this, I realized more and more things about myself. And one of them was I was stuck in this marriage that I no longer liked. I was in a situation that I no longer felt like I could live in. And for me, it was very weird because at that time I was monogamous. And I realized during this method of spiritual awakening and chakra alignment that I actually was polyamorous and that I actually had the capability of loving romantically more than one person. And I was, whoa, time out, right? But within this, I also learned to love myself as well on a deeper level, not just on the surface and not just in my head, not just physically. Like I truly learned to love everything about myself. And it was very interesting to me because I had never been through something so drastic before. And eventually, things happened within my marriage that I was just like, I'm no longer going to take this. And we did end up parting ways. And eventually, we did end up getting divorced. And I say all that to say that within this process of going through this, I learned what I wanted in my life, what I needed in my life, not only from myself, but also from the people around me. And I also learned what I would and wouldn't take from other people, which was really interesting to me because I really was a very much giving person, excuse me, and decided that um, I really was going to, like, this is what I was going to do with my life. Um, so after we separated, COVID hit, and I decided that I was going to finish my book, which I had been writing for 6 years. So I finally finished it and then I published it. And after I did that, I actually decided that I was going to start my coaching business. And I did. And now I am a Reiki master, a practical Reiki master. And I also help, I have trauma release programs, I do workshops and talks about just what I do and, all of that wonderfulness. So recently, I was doing a TikTok and I actually had talked to my best friend the night before, and we were talking about a whole bunch of other things. And we were talking about loving ourselves. And we've both been through similar situations at different times regarding our marriages. And one of the things that we were talking about was just like learning to love yourself, like after that, after, being in a marriage, after going through a trauma, after anything really, like really learning to love yourself again. And while I was making this TikTok and I was talking about this, there was a thought that entered my brain, and I basically just said it. And I was like, since we've been born, we've always learned to be loved by someone else. And that really prompted so many questions because my brain in that moment literally went, all right. And I was like, wait, like, what? Like, it was so heavy because it's so true. Like, when we're born, we learn how to trust, we learn how to love, we learn how to feel, how to emote. And all of that comes in because of the people who we come into this world with, right? Our parents and our siblings and things of that nature, right? Um, and what people don't realize is that those people that you were born into, like that family that you were born into, really teach you how to do these things. So in reality, it's not in reality, just in life, you are learning so much more from the people that you have in your life than you truly learn from yourself. So as you get older and you start to create your own views and make your own friends, and like everybody has like all of these different dynamics within their relationships and friendships and things of that nature, you kind of get lost in the whole like, yes, I'm accepting this from certain people. And sometimes we question, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes we question why we accept these things the way that they are, right? You hear a lot of coaches talk about mindset and changing your mindset and changing your viewpoint and changing your, all the things. And it really is because what they really want to invoke is a self thinking brain. Like they want you to take all of those things into consideration, but they also want you to start forming your own thought processes about the things that you want and need in your life. And I think a lot of people understand that to a point, but then then we have the other voice inside of us, and that's the voice that's always been there, the one that has been listening to all of the other people and all of their stuff and what they push on us, telling us, well, no, that's not right, you're not supposed to do that, you're not supposed to self-think, you're not supposed to grow, you're not supposed to whatever it is. You have that voice there that's telling you this. And sometimes we have to really understand, like, how do we push past that and continue to go in the direction that we want to and really grow and learn to love ourselves, learn to trust, learn to feel and emote, and be vulnerable and all of the things. Like, there really is a way for you to do these things. And sometimes we get so caught up in the negative mindset of it all, of like, yeah, you can't do that. Like, why are you trying to do that? Why do you feel like you need this love? Blah, 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 right? Yeah. It that whole phrase hit a little different. Um, and it was very interesting. It was very interesting to see the thought process on that. So now that we've discussed all of that, when does that stop? When does the learning how to trust, learning how to love and feel and emote, like, when does that exactly stop? And we have to assume that it stops when we start to learn and start to um, take in more of the world. So as we start to become older and go to school, our parents may teach us how to, or I should say, our parents are our guardians, will teach us, how to trust, how they trust us. So then when we go into the world, we look at how other people may trust us or how we can trust other people. We put those kind of expectations on other people and what that looks like. And it's the same thing when it comes to love. A lot of times, we are learning how to love from the people who raised us. And sometimes it may not be the healthiest of love. Some families, I've definitely been in situations where some families yell to love, to show their love. Some people believe that when they're in an abusive situation, that is showing them love. Somebody who degrades them, that's showing them love. I thought that someone who had sex with me was showing me love. Um, And that those are the things that we continuously learn. I'm not saying that it's something that we only learned when we were kids. It's something that we continuously start to grow a Rolodex of information. And that is the way that we are taught to learn, like taught to love, right? So for me, in my situation, and the reason why I decided that I was going to stop connecting sex and love, and those things were no longer going to be interchangeable, was because I felt like, for me, I just was not happy. Like, I felt like there was more to a relationship or a sexual relationship than just the sex. Like, it really floored me that if I was romantic with you in general, that you that the person felt like I didn't love them because I didn't have sex with them. And I thought that was so weird. Because if you know anything about the love languages, which I will use as an example, um, as a quality time person, I don't have to have sex with you in order to have quality time, right? Like, sex doesn't equal quality time. So for me to be happy in those situations, I didn't necessarily have to do that, but I felt like I was giving away a part of myself that I truly didn't understand because of the trauma that I had been through. And because of that, I was like, you know what? I can't continue to give this piece of me away. And at first it just started out with, I can't continue to casually give myself away in this manner. So I no longer had casual sex encounters because we're not in a relationship. Like, you don't love me, right? So because you're not giving me that relationship status, you're just not going to get that. And I was like, that's just how it's going to be. Um, and personally, I was okay with that because that made me feel good. Now, was this the point where I was like, sex and love are still not interchangeable? Absolutely not. I got into relationships after that, and still, when I was in relationships with those people, I linked that with love. But I also realized that there were other things within those relationships that showed me that people love me. All right. So that was like small gestures, like getting me gifts, getting me flowers, giving me a card, celebrating my birthday, like, little things like, oh, this person really cares. Right. Um, and as I went along, I remember there was a point after I got married that I realized that sex was not going to keep us together. Like, will it help? Sure. Like, people need sexual connection. That is a human thing. Um, but I realized that that was not going to keep us together. And that's when I realized, like, oh, I can't continue to use these things interchangeably. And that was at the very beginning of our relationship, not our marriage specifically, but the whole relationship. Like, we were together for 8 years. So before we even got married, I realized, like, oh, I can't use this as my foundation, right? So I started to change that. And again, it wasn't until this chakra alignment that I realized how exactly I needed to love myself. So one of the ways that I realized, like, that I need to love myself was I really did have to look at what I wanted in life and who I was as an individual. Because that was going to shape how I not only loved myself, but how I loved other people. Okay. And what I realized about myself was that there was so much that I had hidden from myself, about my true self, because it didn't flow right with the people that I was with. And, my friends didn't like that I was outspoken and I like cartoons, and people were like, hey, you're an adult. And there's like all these things that I really put on the back burner for myself. So I no longer understood or knew who I was, which was very, very difficult, especially when you're in a marriage, you're trying to fix it, but you don't even know who you are to be able to fix your end of the spectrum. And I was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and figure that out, right? Which, by the way, was not an easy task. Like, I'm telling you, like, I went through this 10-week process. I'm still learning new things about myself. And that's okay. Like, this is like 5 years in after this chakra alignment session where I was like, yes, okay, this is what I love about myself. These are the things that I truly hold dear, and these are my values. And I learned in a business class once that there is this thing called the identity iceberg. And basically, this identity iceberg shapes who you are as an individual, because it talks about the underlying surfaces, like your experiences and the people that you grew up with, your friends, your family, like all of those things like are on the bottom. Like those things make up you, right? And then you have the top portion of the iceberg, which really talks about all of the other things, like who you want to be, how you present yourself, how you show up, things like that, and like how you want to present yourself, right? And I went through this. I remember going through this task and realizing, like, okay, like we all do the same thing. Like if I ask somebody, like, who are you? Like, tell me about yourself. One of the first things they'll do is like, obviously they'll tell you their name, right? That's one of the ways that they identify. Now it would be by, using pronouns. I identify as she, her, right? And then it would be like, I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. I'm a wife. I'm a girlfriend. I am a divorcee. Like you get all of these labels, and you realize that that's just the surface of what you are. Those are just roles that you play in your life. Um, and what we want to know really is like, what's the meat? Like, what makes Tay Tay, right? Um, and even now, like I identify as the Unapologetic Trauma Release Guide. I am a practical Reiki master. Like I still have these titles, but who am I underneath? Like I am a big, vulnerable piece of flesh that enjoys people. I love everything about life. I love animals. I literally will put myself out there for anyone. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. Like these are the things that make me who I am, right? Like I don't identify with certain aspects of what people think that I should be or should identify with, right? Um, and that really is because I've just come to grips with, like, I understand that, yes, like skin color is surface, you know? But loving yourself is I think there's a quote, it's like, loving yourself is more than skin deep. Like it's not just surface. I don't just love the outside of me. Like I love everything to like the little tiniest cell in my body. Like I love everything about it. And I got there by understanding who I really was to my core, like what my values are, how I identify in the world, the things that I do for other people. Like I really learned to love those aspects of myself. But then I also learned that you have to be able to love the flawed portions of yourself too, because in real life, humans are imperfect. And because of that, we're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna be flawed, and we're going to do things that probably we should not do, and that's gonna be a thing. But we do have to understand that that's who we are, and if we want to change it, awesome. Like if you're like, yes, I want to change this flaw about myself, great, go do that. As long as you are happy with the changes that you make within that flaw, then by all means, please do all of that. That's great. Um, but it really came down to truly loving who I was to my core and not allowing other people to identify what that is for me. Okay. Um, so then, of course, when it comes to loving yourself, you want to kind of look at not only the things that make you happy and your core values, but you also want to look at how you present yourself to the world and how you show yourself the love and care, the grace, the kindness, the patience with yourself, because it's a process. And that took even longer. And it's still taking a long time because, I've come to grips with a lot of things for myself. I've come to grips that I have personal boundaries that I do not want crossed. But then I also have to realize that other people also have personal boundaries that they do not want crossed. Um, and I realize that being able to hold to a boundary helps me to trust myself and to love myself more, because that's giving myself a piece of myself that I wasn't able to give myself before. And that was also an interesting concept. Learning that I could love myself so deeply and really understand who I was to my core, but also being able to take that same principle and learning to love other people to their core, right? Um, so one of the things, besides looking inward, of course, one of the things that I decided to do was really learning how to give myself the love that I needed. And for a long time, that was the hard part. I actually talked to a friend today and we were talking about wearing makeup. And I was just like, that's just not for me. I don't personally like makeup. I don't like to do it. I don't like to all the things. I personally just don't like how it feels on my face. But when it comes to Halloween, I am all about it. But that's because I get to get into my creative side and be something different. And she was saying how she, doesn't necessarily love makeup, but she likes the way that it makes her feel. And that is definitely what loving yourself is all about. It really is. When you walk into the world, do you love the person that you are doing so? When I walk into a room, I bring in an energy of not only confidence, but love, of welcome, of joy, of curiosity. And people are normally attracted to that because they're like, what is it that this girl has that I don't? And it could be any one of those things. And it could also be a plethora of other things, right? Um, but at the same time, uh, it really comes down to, like, I am so confident in myself. I love myself so much that when I walk into a room, people will look and just be like, who's that chick? And the reason why they say that is because I know who I am, and the love that I have for myself spews out of me energetically. It spews out of my mouth. Like, it's really interesting. But also, like, it doesn't come off as arrogance. It doesn't come off as, it really does come off as confidence. Um, and it's almost like a relaxed confidence too, now that I think about it. Because I'm so comfortable being me. I am so comfortable knowing that I am high energy and I am direct as hell, and I will say anything that basically comes to mind. And yes, I will feel bad if it hurts feelings, but also I have to think, like, was it more of a tone? Was it more of where was it the words that I actually said? Like, what was it exactly that caused discord within that person? And most of the times I'm very unapologetic about it because I'm just like, I said the things, and sometimes those same people will come back to me later, and definitely not within the next couple of days because they're probably still pissed at me. But they will come back to me in the next couple of days, and they'll be like, you're actually right about this thing, and I'm like, cool. And I don't boast about that. That's just, because there's no reason to. You've realized something that I seen, that you either want to change, or that you're like, yes, that is definitely me. And now you realize that you don't have to be upset about it because that is you, right? Loving yourself is hard. Loving yourself is hard. Trust me, I did not get to this place easily. There was not a yes, let's go ahead and love ourselves today. Like, that's not that's not what exactly happened. But when it comes down to it, you really just have to give yourself grace. You have to give yourself love and kindness. You really have to show yourself that you are there for yourself, even when nobody is. And that is really what builds up your trust, your discernment, your awareness of what other people and how other people are treating you and what you are giving out. Because I've been the person to not be so kind. Even as we speak, like, I'm pretty sure there are people right now who are listening to this who are like, I'm sure you're not nice to everybody. I said, no, I am not. Because I still do have that. I still have things that I want to be a certain way. Like, I still have that perfectionist type of mindset. And I do still have, like, the control thing. Like, that still is a thing. It is less and less than what it used to be. But I still have these ways that I want to talk and people to hear me. Like, I want people to understand where I come from in my voice and not in some sugar coated way. And most people are grateful for that, and most people are not. And there are still times where I have to think about whether something hurt me or not, like whether that crossed the line. And that's because, again, I am still learning new things about myself. So when it comes down to learning to love yourself, like, again, it encompasses everything. It encompasses your mindset, and it encompasses your body, your physical body. It encompasses your spirituality, and your unbridled opinions of yourself, like those things that you are not going to change, like those views that you are not going to change about yourself because somebody else thinks otherwise. And it's interesting. I've realized over the years that loving myself has really made me realize that, like, just because somebody says something about the way that I am, like, I'll use this as an example. Like, I watch anime. Like, I'm grown as hell, and I watch anime. I watch all kinds of cartoons. I think they're wonderful. I think they're great. And if somebody came to me and was like, "Why are you watching that? Like, that's for kids. That's for nerds. I don't understand why you're, watching that. Blah blah blah." I can honestly just say it's because I like it. Like, these anime characters are also unbridled in their opinions and in their relationships and in their friendships and all of these things. Like, they show me that my type of people exist, that you can still love yourself and be yourself without having to put on a show. Before I go, I will tell you guys about one. There's a Netflix series called Kakigurai, and I'm probably saying that wrong, but don't really care. But it's about a school that these kids go to, and one of the things that they do is they gamble. All of the kids gamble, and there is this chick who comes in, and she starts to expose all of the cheating. And in one episode, there's this this woman, girl, who grew up hiding herself to the point where everybody thought she was a guy. Now, her pronouns might be she, they. They don't really go into that in the series, but I'm just saying, like, that's just when they came out, they were a guy. Like, everybody, like, had, like, They were so thoughtful and caring and loving and just really was there for everybody. And they thought that they were a guy. And they get to his game and he basically loses it. Like this girl has him lose it and she's just like, listen, I want you to be you. Like, stop hiding behind this mask. Stop putting it on. Just stop it. And they go through all of this. And then in the next scene, after all of the craziness goes out, like, they basically, like, their hair pops out of place. Like, oh my gosh, like, it is done, right? In the next scene, you see her walking down the hallway in her skirt, in her school uniform, with her hair cut and her hair clip, and she just looks completely happy and gorgeous and comfortable in her skin. And it is literally because somebody came up to her and said, yo, take off the mask. Stop hiding behind that. Stop hiding behind that persona. Start living life like you want to live life, not by how other people have set their standards. And that's really what loving yourself is about. It's being able to take what everybody else said with a grain of salt and understanding that you are not like them. You may be in some ways, but you're not like them. You're Jessica, you're Mallory, you're Samantha, you're Paul, like, you're Lee, like, you are these people, like, that's who you are. So start showing those true colors and really understanding, like, what that means to be that person. I know someone who is doing that right now, where they are just like, I am learning to fall back in love with me. And in order to do that, you really have to understand that the process is going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. And that a lot of times, what you've already learned, you will have to unlearn. And I think that's the sucky part. It's because it's work, because it is work. So I hope that you guys got something out of this talk. I feel like I actually rambled, so hopefully it was helpful. But please, like, if you have anything that you want to say, if you love this topic and you want to hear me chat more about it, or if you want to hear me chat about other things, like, please subscribe to my podcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am going to be uploading different things here and there to kind of show you exactly what I do, why I do it, and everything like that. And honestly, I'm just super excited to share my talent, to share my journey, and to share what I went through. And it's going to be a very interesting ride. My podcast is called The Unapologetic Guide to Healing. Of course, you can find me on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe. And you can also find me on Facebook at Desirable Phoenix. You can find me on TikTok, trauma.release.guide, which is also the same for Instagram. And yes, message me. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's anything that you want to hear regarding trauma release, Reiki, chakras, anything like that. I will be happy to help you with that. I hope that you guys have a wonderful evening, and I will definitely be talking to you guys soon. So have a good night.